Today you'll see a linen peplum top, but can also be worn as a little jacket type thing. I'm sharing sewing details that are specific to linen fabrics. Super practical, so you can get out your linen fabrics and start sewing up some garments. I've got some cheeky princess seams with some top stitching. Hi sewing friends, my name's Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and if you've been following along for the last few days, you know that I'm creating super fun content for you all around linen fabric. Most of you are in the northern hemisphere and are headed to warmer weather, and linen is a perfect fabric for this type of weather. I'm in the southern hemisphere, I'm in winter, I'm in Brazil type winter, so yeah, I'm not wearing sleeves yet. It's still not that cold. So linen can be a fabric that you can wear all year round. Please catch up on episodes 1 and 2. Episode 1 was all about the fabric itself, how it's made, the types of weights, types of weaves, how to care for it, pros and cons about sewing with linen. Showed you some examples of projects I've made with this fabric. And the latest episode was super practical. There was over 20 tips there of how to work with linen. Continuing this linen content, I've made a linen garment and I've filmed a lot of the process for you that is a bit more specific to linen, not just any other fabrics. This is a pattern I've made before. It's not a new pattern and I've had a lot of fun with it. What I'm talking about is the lyric dress and peplum from Love Notions. This is a super beloved pattern for me. I've made it since 2019 a few times. I've made several variations of them, but I am focusing on linen in this video. It's just that it's featuring the lyric dress. This is a Feature Friday pattern for today, Friday. That means it's only $5. That is 60% off the regular price. And if you use my code Karina10 at checkout, you get an even further discount because it's 10% less, even on top of sale prices. So don't forget to use my code if you want to get patterns. I'm not going to do a full-on pattern review because I already do have content around this dress. It will be like a 1-minute summary if you've never heard of it. But it is a really beautiful dress made for woven fabrics. It's got a V neckline with a button band down the front. It's a separate bodice that's semi-fitted. There are bust darts here on the side and on the waist. On the back there are also back darts. For this area you can make it sleeveless, finished with binding, or there are lots of sleeve options there, lengths and types of sleeves. And for the dresses, you can sew on an A-line skirt or you can sew on a gathered skirt that has patch pockets. You can make these skirts longer or shorter. It's a dress that fits amazing once you customize the fit to you, and you can make several dresses of the same pattern and they will never look the same. As for fabric use, you can choose whether you want a more flowy look or a more structured look. I always divide my little list here into 2 sections, as you can see there. There is a gathered skirt option and I would choose one of the flowy fabrics. So if I was going to do the gathered skirt version, I prefer gathers with more fluid fabrics. Tencel twill would be amazing, rayon twill, rayon linen blend. I do have a dress made in that fabric and it's amazing. For the structured types of fabrics, you can see here, the bodice is fine. Like I would be happy to make a bodice out of a structured fabric. You just need to be aware that the skirt is just going to stand out further out from your body, whether it be the A-line or the gathered skirt. So that is your choice. It's a visual aesthetic choice, of course. So linen rayon blend. You can use a chambray, a really light denim, that type of material. It'll still work. Feel like a lightweight cotton sateen would be really nice also. The pattern was updated last year in 2021 and it goes up to a hip of 59.5 inches and up to a size of 32 US. There are bust cup sizes from A through D, or from 1 to 4 inches of difference between your high bust and your full bust. Remember, sewing cup sizes are not bra cup sizes, so it's not the bra size that you wear. You do have to measure your body to choose. If you do have a 5 or more inch difference, then you can choose the D cup, which is the biggest cup here, and do a full bust adjustment on that. Depending on the type of cup size, you have anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of ease at the bust. You have about 3 inches of ease at the waist, so it is pretty semi-fitted. And then at the hips, because it's A-lined or gathered, you have, about 9 inches of ease there. So don't worry too much about the hips if you've got like a 1 size difference, or maybe even 2 sizes difference from the waist and the hips. If more, then I think you do need to blend out the skirt so it's not hugging your hips and not hanging correctly. It is a semi-fitted bodice. The darts really do need to fit correctly. I have already done the fitting. I know this bodice fits me. All I have to do is whip it out and sew it, and it's so nice because all the muslin process has already been done. By muslin process, I mean sewing a test garment out of a material that's similar to the one that you're going to use. I tend to use just a cheaper material. I will never use the same fabric because that's just expensive. So all I've done to mine are just some dart adjustments, lowering side bust darts and shortening waist darts on the front. but actually the waist height for this dress fits my waist. It's really good there. I haven't needed to add or take away from the bodice. So I've given you a sneak peek of a beige peplum I made using the lyric dress. I made it with linen. That is a linen blend actually. It's a fabric I use the most. Linen 55%, 45% rayon. It looks more like linen than anything else. It has all the slub texture and the fibers, and it's just beautiful. Wrinkly of course, but a little less than 100% linen. And cost wise, it is a fabric I can buy and use and still enjoy that 55% of linen that it has in there. This sewing segment has a lot of practical things for you to see. If you've watched the previous video about tips for sewing with linen, you can see them sort of applied here into one garment. I'm sure you're going to take away things that will serve you for your sewing. Linen is super easy to cut out. I'm just using my rotary cutter just to make it easy on myself. This is a peplum that will go underneath the bodice. After cutting it out, I want to make sure I mark which is the wrong side that I've chosen. My white chalk is not going to work, so I'm just going to pin a yellow paper on the wrong side. Up along the selvage edge here, I want to place my pattern pieces that are on the center, like the center of the peplum and the center front of the bodice. But I want to do a type of modified block fusing so that they don't shrink vertically. I have a very faint mark right here where this is going to go. I've cut them a little longer though. When I cut this interfacing, I cut it super straight. This is where I'm going to fuse it there. When I place my pattern piece, this will be exactly where that integrated facing is going to be folded. I just want to fuse this on before I cut my pattern piece. So I've aligned the edge of my interfacing along the edge of that little faint line I have underneath. So this is for one side, and over here I have the same thing. So I'll get my interfacing, align it here and fuse it where it's supposed to be. I'm fusing an area that is slightly longer than what my pattern piece is going to be. If I move my fabric over, you can see going further up on the fabric, I have another area that I'm also going to interface, and this is going to be the center front of the bodice. This is the center front of my peplum. It's got a fold there, and that is the area that needed to be interfaced. This will have buttons down the center also. So that is the section of fabric I have already interfaced. That will go right there. Where this fold is, I'm going to meet it right at the edge of my interfacing there. And then this is my center front. This also has an integrated facing right there. So right there is the edge of my interfaced area, and I have a line here. By doing this type of block fusing, I'm making sure that the interfaced area is stable, but if the fabric reacted and shrunk vertically a little, it's already been done, and now when I cut my pieces, they're going to be fine. Now, differently to rayon and other delicate fabrics, if I was to cut this, I would have to move my body and cut, but linen, it won't go anywhere, it won't move, so I can actually move the piece to suit where my positioning is here. You don't need to worry too much about cutting. It's really easy because the fabric doesn't slide underneath your pattern piece. You know, it stays quite stable because it is quite structured. This bodice has a V neckline. This little shape is going to be the facing like that. That's why it's got that shape. This can stretch out so quickly with linen. So I've got my pattern piece underneath to make sure everything is the right shape, the right size, so this doesn't grow on me. And I've got my little strips of interfacing, 3/8 of an inch wide. When I sew my binding, I'm going to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, so a strip that is this wide is going to be fine. I'll just find the glue side and just fuse this on here. And this is way superior to stay stitching for sure. I'd rather do this with a V neckline. And now I have to do the same with the other side. Now I can take my paper off. I haven't moved anything, so my bottom layer is my reference so that they stay the same. And I can fuse on this other side. And now I have a really stable neckline that's not going to stretch. Look, really firm. Nothing's gonna gape. I love doing this method. From my leftovers, I cut a few pieces on the bias to make my own bias tape. Here I have some that are already made. I'm using the bias tape maker that says 18 at the back. That's 18 millimeters, a little less than 3/4 of an inch, finished right here. So this is nice for linen because it's cut on the bias, and linen gives really well. You know, whatever shape you're going to sew this onto, like a curved armhole, it's just going to mold to it really nicely. So it's a great fabric to make your own bias tape. And making it is so easy. It's easy to press. It's not like making bias tape with chiffon where you have to spray it with starch. In this case, all you need steam and a hot iron, and that's it. And it's just so easy to make. It's gonna make the inside look super neat. So if you're making the dress version, all you would need to make is a little bit of bias tape for the neckline. not much you need at all. If you're making it sleeveless, then you need to make more like I am. Here are all my pieces for my peplum top. You can see I have princess seams right there, stabilized center fronts for the bodice, and the skirt piece, which is shorter because it's a peplum right there. Back on the fold, peplum on the fold. This is actually the only piece I had to mark which was the wrong side because there was no actual marks on the pattern. That will help me know what is the wrong and the right side. This is all the bias tape you just saw me make to finish the V neckline right there and the sleeveless armholes. After doing all that prep work, we finally get to sewing, and I'm going to start my process with the back darts. These are just regular darts that make the waist smaller at the back, and I start from the small tip of the dart and go off to the wider part of the dart. The back bodice and the back peplum are both cut on the fold, so after I've done the darts, I'm just uniting these right sides together. I have my bodice on top and the peplum on the bottom. The peplum is slightly biased because it's a curved piece, so I'd rather have that on the bottom. And then after doing that, I can serge it and I can put my back aside. Here we have one of the princess seams already sewn. I haven't been to press it yet. Here's the side front and here's the center front. You can see that it's smooth, there's no puckers. I've already serged there. I'm only using 3/8 seam allowance. So when you use a small seam allowance like this, it's really easy to conform to the seam allowance of the curve. You rarely need to snip into these curves. Remember, we're uniting two different types of curves here, the convex curve that sort of shapes outwards and the concave one that goes inwards. If you were working with a really stiff fabric, really heavy, with a really large seam allowance, then it would be hard for this to go really smoothly, and then you would have to take notches out of this rounded edge and snips into the other one. But with linen, you know, it works out really well. So let me show you these ones I haven't sewn yet. Here's my center and here's my side front. I had drawn 3 notches there when I modified this bodice, so I have this one at the bust height, one here and one there, so it'll be easy for me to put them together. Now let me switch this around. When I sew princess seams, I like to have this concave curve on the top and this one on the bottom. On some patterns you'll find that there's a little bit of extra ease on this curve. Not on this one, but I still find it easier to sew it with this one on the feed dogs. It'll go smoothly without any puckers. So I'm just going to match my reference points first and then just pin everything that's in between. Even though my side front piece here doesn't have any extra ease, that's not the way I made them. This is quite on the bias right here and it could stretch out. So if you put it at the bottom against the feed dogs, any little imperfection there that might have stretched out a tad will be sorted once you sew it like this. You keep this one on top, which is a more stable area. Now we hop into general construction. You're seeing exactly the order in which I'm sewing this, and now it's time to sew the front bodice to the front peplum. Same as we did with the back, only this time it's 2 separate pieces. I'm using a 3/8 seam allowance and I'm keeping the peplum at the feed dogs and the bodice on the presser foot. It's just easier that way. After sewing both, I can serge these edges. Serging the edges is going to give me a really nice clean look, and I have beige thread to match the color of this linen, so it's going to look really neat inside. Now we get our back piece, put it on the table and get our 2 fronts, and we can sew the simple shoulder seams. Now we can sew the shoulder seams right sides together, both of them of course. After sewing these, I'm going to serge them. I've been using a 2.8 stitch length for all of my sewing for this project. I think it's working well. Now before pinning these side seams together, I did serge these edges separately because I want to press the seams open. I would rather do the side seams in one go than do the bodice first and then the peplum and then sew the peplum to the bodice on the round. I just think it's easier this way, but you can do it on the round if you want to. So this is just a 3/8 seam allowance, and I think the seams pressed open are gonna lie nicer. This fabric is medium weight, so if I serge the edges together and press them to the back, I think it would be too bulky. This is what we've done so far. The neckline and armholes are still raw. It's looking really nice and neat. Everything has been serged. Now I generally would not hang my garment without finishing the neckline first, but I'm confident that the small amount of interface I put on the neckline is going to keep it stable. You can see it there. That gives me a lot of peace of mind. On the armholes, I did regular stay stitching at the beginning of the process. I didn't film that, but I did do it. There are the princess seams. I'm still not decided if I'm going to top stitch or not, but for now let's hop into finishing this V neckline with the self-bias tape that we've made. I've got everything ready to sew on the neck binding. So remember, this was an integrated facing. I have already been to the iron and pressed that, but I've pressed it back this way, right sides together here. You can see the fold is right at the edge of the interfacing, and this was serged previously. So my binding is just going over it by a little bit, as you can see. So that means it's going to be covered once we flip this. So that's where I started pinning, just a little beyond where this edge is, as you can see, and I've pinned it all the way around. That fold that you can see there from the bias tape is going to be my reference. Here I have the same thing, facing folded, right sides together, the tape on top just protruding a little bit, and we'll just go ahead and sew. Okay, so after sewing that, it looks sort of weird, but it will be fine. This is when we just flip this, and then when we look at it from the wrong side, the bias tape is behind that facing and it's covered by the facing, so it's going to be a really neat finish like that. And we are going to understitch this, pushing the seam allowance underneath the bias tape right here, and I'm going to start as close to the edge as I can. I won't be able to go all the way. I'm going to use my blind hem presser foot with the needle to the left. It makes it easier. I haven't snipped on this V neckline area because it's quite straight, but here on the back where there's a curve, I'm going to snip before I get to this part. I had forgotten that detail. Because the seam allowance is already really small, just a 1/4 inch, you don't need to trim further. So I'm only going to snip on the back neckline. It's the only curved area. I've hand basted my binding down. This is how it looks like from the inside. And before top stitching, I've been to the iron with my pressed cloth and I've steamed it so that everything's really nice. There's no puckers. You can see how nicely the bias tape conforms to the curves here. Everywhere is really nice. I've also sewn on my binding for the sleeveless armholes, and I've done the same thing, steamed it, hand basted it, and now I'm going to be sewing this from the right side. I am going to be using matching top stitching thread. Basically the hem and the neckline and down the center will be continuous because I have the hem pressed right there and ready to go. I'll start somewhere here at the back, and I'm not going to back stitch. I'm just going to leave long threads that I'm going to tie at the back, and it'll be, in the end, it'll look really seamless, just like a continuous stitch. I've decided to do some top stitching right at the end. I wasn't really sure if I was going to do it. I'm doing it with a matching color thread. It is actually top stitching thread, and I'm going to top stitch the princess seams and the waist seam. Same seam I used to sew the binding on the neckline and the armholes. You saw that I was sewing princess seams in there, and the lyric dress does not have princess seams. I have already filmed the process of transforming those side bust darts and waist darts into a nice princess seam cut. I've chosen to do the one that starts from the armhole. You can also do it from the shoulder. So I already have that footage filmed, and I'm still in the process of editing it for you. I didn't want to include it in this video because that is content that is not specific to the lyric dress. It's content that is sort of more general and something that you could do to any bodice that has darts. I've even transformed a sundress that has darts into the princess seams. So that is something that you'll see in the next couple of days, but just know that the content is coming. That's why this lyric dress has the princess seams. This is my peplum top. I hope the camera can pick up the texture of the fabric. It's a really nice, you can see the inside is finished with the bias tape that I made from the same fabric, and it's really neat. The armholes have also got the same finish. I did use actual top stitching thread to do all this, so it's not just the regular thread. I decided to do 8 buttonholes. I probably could have done without the last one, but I already made it, and I've got these little cute buttons there that were matching. I always make sure to have a button right there where the peplum unites with the bodice, right there. And then this one is the one at my bust height right there. I did also top stitch these princess seams because linen just likes top stitching. I think it just gives it something extra. And I've also top stitched the waist seam, just edge stitching. I didn't do anything else, and you know, I like my blind hem presser foot for that. At the back, I didn't do anything different here. It's on the fold. There are darts here that bring it in at the waist, and then the peplum. And the way you sew the peplum or the dress is the same. It's just that the peplum is shorter. There's nothing different, and it's so nice. I mean, I'm just so happy with it. Inside, I finished the seams with the serger. I just did a simple fold up type of hem and finished with the serger. The idea for this garment is that I can wear it on its own. It fits me fine if I just wear my skin and my undergarment under there. And also I can wear it open, little jacket over a dress, which is something that I love to do. I have some pretty fitted dresses that are just too figure hugging, and I don't really like to show off my figure that much. If I go to church, I like to layer something on top. So something like this that's light, that's not going to give me an extra layer of warmth that I don't need. It's more an aesthetic decision. This is perfect. I can just open up those buttons and just put it on, and it would be amazing. This is my lyric peplum top that I made with a linen rayon blend. There's 55% linen in there. Beige color, it'll go over this beautiful dress. This is a Tessa sheath dress. I really love the fit. This is a pattern I've done before, so that's why this time I had fun and I transformed those bust darts into princess seams on the front. The bodice hits my waist. Maybe if I want to button up here, I can do it once. I love that for this peplum. I can wear it on its own, but also like a little jacket over fitted dresses. I bound my sleeveless armholes with self-made bias tape as well as inside the neckline, and I love it. Yeah, I'm just showing you the princess seams because I'm so proud of them, just for a bit of fun and to do some top stitching on this linen. I think because linen is a more structured fabric, it can be more versatile for it to be a little jacket like this. So that's what I love about linen. I really like this top because it's a really neutral color that is going to go over a lot of things, and I think it looks really nice over this Tessa sheath dress that I have. It's got a little bit of beige in there, so I think it goes together really well. Here is my same lyric peplum top, and I have it over my printed linen Allegro pants. I think if you wear loud pants, you have to wear something more subdued on the top, like this beige top made with a linen rayon blend. This time just worn on its own. I have a little cami underneath though because the fabric is a little bit sheer. You can see the ease at the waist is nice and comfy, and the C-cup bodice fits me really well. Though you can see my princess seam there, that was a modification I made to the pattern. I love the depth of this V neckline and the armholes. It's just a great pattern to make over and over with different fabrics. Yeah, I'm not done with this one. I know I'm gonna make it more times. It's a great tried and tested pattern for me at this point. I also wanted to share with you some more linen inspiration that's got to do with the lyric, just because I'm using the lyric today as a feature. I have used the A-line skirts of the lyric, just the pieces of the skirt, and just made a rectangle waistband, nothing complicated, and I've done a skirt instead, just not use the bodice. A couple of years ago I had this beautiful linen that was very loosely woven and really fine, really lightweight actually, with a print, very pretty, and I made that one for myself. You can see some images here. Last time when she came in 2019, she actually took a few of my pieces. So these skirts end up hitting me above the knee, that's how I like them. For her they end up being a little bit midi or sort of below the knee because she's a little shorter. She also has a smaller waist, so all I did to fix that issue was just thread an elastic at the back part of the waist, and that brought it in at the back, and then it fits her fine. You can see her wearing there. I did get some shots of her in my skirt that then turned out to be hers. So that is a lyric skirt I made out of linen. I made another one back then also that was cut on the bias using the same pieces. So instead of cutting the back piece on the fold, I cut it with a seam, and I cut these pieces in a single layer so that I could mirror them with a print and get these chevrons. So everything matches here. It was pretty labor intensive, and cutting on the bias with linen is actually nicer than cutting on the bias with other fabrics because it is a more stable fabric. You still need to take all the precautions about it stretching out and deforming, but the actual process is nicer because you can put your fabric, you can lay your things, you can use your rotary cutter, and you're not worried about everything moving around like you have to with rayon or silk. So even though this was a lengthier skirt to make, it was still very, very enjoyable because of the fabric choice. And this is the front. I did sew in a contrasting button placket there just to break up the chevrons there. That was my decision. And there's my rectangle waistband. It's only an inch wide. You know, it accomplishes the purpose of keeping your skirt up. It's fine, it doesn't need to be curved all the time, you know. So yeah, it's so lovely. I didn't top stitch this one because I didn't want to go through the stripes. So my top stitching decisions have got to do with the fabric, if it's a solid, if it's a print, if it'll show, if it won't. If you have a garment with a really busy print, top stitching is really not going to be that noticeable. No one's going to see it. If you do want to do some edge stitching, but the 2 rows, I think it's overkill. With this one that has stripes, I didn't want any top stitching. Oh my gosh, there's nothing I dislike more than thread going through stripes, and especially if it's different color stripes, you know, I just don't like that. So I have a hand hem, and I finished the hem with bias tape right there. Bias tape, this is store-bought bias tape. It's really nice, and because it's all curved on the bias, it'll just turn out nice and smooth. So that is an extra step I did with this one, and it's so lovely. I love this skirt. Lyric skirt, you can make a skirt out of the lyric dress also. This is the same type of blend as this one, 55% linen, 45% rayon. This linen skirt in 2019 using the A-line skirt pieces from the lyric dress, and I added a waistband. I cut these on the bias. There are stripes there, so I created chevrons on the centers of the skirt and on the sides. Anything bias cut with linen looks really good. It just gives you a different drape, but it's not that hard to work with as other fabrics that you cut on the bias. So this was a great project and another extra way to use up the lyric dress pattern and just make it up a skirt. It's missing the bodice. I usually wear it just with a navy top. The pastel blue and pink, those are colors that don't suit me, so I wouldn't put those colors up against my face. But the navy, I like that one. % rayon, 30% linen, very sheer, very, very drapey, and that's more attributed to the rayon because that's the highest percentage in the composition. This is a dress I made last year in a size 16. This is where I made the fitting adjustments to fit my body last year. Before making my linen peplum version now, I tried on my dress to make sure it was still fitting correctly so I could use the same pattern. So I'm always up to like printing different sizes and making changes as I go because my body is not static. I hope the camera can pick up the texture there, but you can see that slub texture. It's so pretty. The small amount of linen in there does make a difference to the feel. This fabric is more expensive also, so I also like to make my test garments. I don't want to just cut into this type of fabric and sew it up. With this one I didn't have any fabric left over to make my own bias tape like I did with my peplum, so I just have store-bought bias tape, but it's narrow as you can see there. This one works better if it's narrow like this than if you leave it wide. If you leave it wide, it's just not the same. It won't conform well here. You might get puckers. So yeah, I do have a video on my channel showing you how to sew on binding on necklines and armholes in great detail based on cutting it narrower. But I think for linen or this type of fabric that is a rayon linen blend, there is an exception where you can use the binding a little bit wider if you want to, but only if it's made from the same fabric, not the store-bought type. That one I think always has to be a little bit narrower. This is a lyric dress from Love Notions, and I've made this dress multiple times in the past. In a smaller size, so I had to reprint my pattern and refit it really. The body changes and so does fitting. So this is a 16 with a C cup. The bodice does hit the waist. I do need a few length adjustments so this bodice hits my waist. The bust darts need to come down also, and the waist darts need to be shortened. The dress has an official sleeveless option, and I know from the past I wanted a little bit more cover on the armhole, so I took the opportunity that I was making again to make that happen, and now I'm really happy. We have a little placket here with a V neckline. I do show you how to sew that on my channel. It's a really classic dress, and I love that this dress flares out a little but it's not that full. This is a rayon linen blend in a beautiful print. Love the look, it's so fresh, and I have worn this out. You can see some pictures of me wearing it in my regular life. So nice. I love the lyric dress. My mom loves it too. I've made it for her in the past. I think you can make it many times and make it look different because there are so many sleeve options. There's also skirt options, so yeah, you can make 10 and no one will know it's the same one. And of course there's my mom's lyric dress. This is the one I've done the most effort with because it's fully lined inside. That's how she wanted. It's the only version where I've used sleeves also because she likes sleeves. I prefer sleeveless, and it's a great dress for her. She actually never changes sizes, so I think it's gonna just fit her forever. And she says that she feels like it's a really expensive dress when she puts it on, just because the weight of the linen, the way it feels on the body, plus the lining. It wrinkles less with the lining. It took a little extra work to stabilize some areas, but you use the same pattern pieces, so it's not too difficult. I hope seeing these examples was helpful so you can see styles that work with this type of fabric, and I hope the sewing content was helpful also. Remember, you'll be seeing more content that will have linen in here. I have some linen makes planned for this month and I'm really excited about it. Watch out for the princess seam video because it's so easy to do once you have a bodice that fits you correctly. It can take you like 2 or 3 minutes to transform it into a princess seam, and you can have a different look for the same pattern. Really enjoyed my princess seams. I think they fit amazing and it was an extra fun thing to do. And I will share it with you, it's just not ready yet. Don't forget to grab your lyric dress and peplum pattern today. Only $5, I think it's amazing value. You'll find my affiliate link down below, as well as all the other lyric videos I've ever made, so you can have more ideas, more information about what you can do with the pattern. I really love having a variety of resources there because you might not be so keen on something I do, but something else you might be excited about. You know, you don't have to like everything I do, I know that. I think the next video you'll see from me here on the channel is going to be a knit project. So stepping a little away from linen, but linen will come back, don't you worry. Have an amazing weekend. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.